Hi, I'm Joanne from the Full Spectrum Centre Limited, an award-winning wellness and vocational training centre, and you're listening to the Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. This show is all about physical, mental, emotional and spiritual wellness, and it's for people who are looking to improve their overall health and well-being. Each week, I'll share with you all the positive takeaways, tools, techniques and tips that I've gathered in both my personal and professional wellness journey that will help you to look, feel and be well. With a dose of motivation and meditation to keep you going, I'll be joined by a few friends who will be sharing their insights along the way too. Welcome to episode 22 of our Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. I'm so happy and excited to be back here with you for our 22nd episode. Now today I'll be discussing the importance of setting healthy boundaries. Boundaries are essential in maintaining healthy relationships, but they can be difficult to establish and maintain. So in this episode, we'll explore what healthy boundaries are, why they are important, and how you can set them. So let's get started. What are healthy boundaries? Well, boundaries are limits we set for ourselves and others in our lives. Healthy boundaries are boundaries that allow us to have a healthy relationship with ourselves and with others. They are, if you like, guidelines that we establish for what we are comfortable with and what we are not comfortable with. Healthy boundaries can include physical, emotional, and mental boundaries. So why are healthy boundaries so important? Well, setting healthy boundaries is important for lots of different reasons, and we'll explore them in this episode. Firstly, they help us to maintain our physical, emotional, and mental health. When we have clear boundaries, we know what's acceptable and what is not, and this can help us to avoid situations that may be harmful or detrimental to our well-being. Secondly, healthy boundaries help us to establish and maintain healthy relationships. When we have clear boundaries, we are able to communicate our needs and expectations to others, and this can prevent misunderstandings and conflicts in our relationships. Finally, healthy boundaries help us to maintain our sense of self. When we have clear boundaries, we know who we are and what we stand for, and this can help us to make decisions that are in line with our values and beliefs. Now, one of the benefits of setting healthy boundaries is that it can improve our overall sense of self-worth and confidence. When we communicate our boundaries assertively, we are sending a message to ourselves and to others that we value our needs and prioritise our well-being. This can help us to feel more empowered and in control of our lives. In addition to improving our self-esteem, setting healthy boundaries can also enhance our relationships with others. When we communicate our boundaries clearly, we are giving others the opportunity to respect our needs and our expectations. This can create a sense of mutual trust and respect in our interactions with others. Setting healthy boundaries can help us to avoid unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. So when we have clear boundaries, we are less likely to be taken advantage of or to engage in behaviour that's harmful or inappropriate. This can create a more harmonious and positive environment for ourselves and those around us. So how can we set healthy boundaries? Setting healthy boundaries can be really challenging, but it's an important skill to develop. So I want to share with you some steps that you can take to set healthy boundaries. Step 1 is to identify your boundaries. The first step in setting healthy boundaries is to identify what those boundaries actually are. Think about what makes you feel uncomfortable, what you're not willing to tolerate, and what you need in order to feel safe and comfortable. Identify your values and your priorities. What is most important to you in your life? What are your non-negotiables? Use this information to guide you in setting boundaries that align with your values and goals. Step 2 is to communicate your boundaries. So once you've identified what they are, it's important to communicate them clearly to others. So be assertive and communicate your boundaries in a way that's respectful but firm. So remember, communicate clearly, assertively, but respectfully. So, when communicating your boundaries, you could use I statements to express how their behaviour affects you rather than placing blame or judgment on them. Step number 3 is to be consistent. Setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It's important to be consistent in enforcing your boundaries, even if it means saying no to someone or walking away from a situation that does not align with your boundaries. Step 4 is to practice self-compassion. Setting boundaries can be really challenging, as I said, but it's important to be patient and kind with yourself as you navigate this process. Remember that it's okay to make mistakes and to adjust your boundaries as needed. Step number 5 is to practice self-care. Setting boundaries can be emotionally and mentally draining, so it's important to practice self-care and to prioritise your well-being. And step 6 is to seek support if needed. If you're struggling to set boundaries, consider seeking support from a therapist, a coach, or a trusted friend or family member. They can offer you guidance and encouragement as you work to establish healthy boundaries. As you can see, setting healthy boundaries is a crucial aspect of self-care and maintaining healthy relationships. Without boundaries, we may find ourselves compromising our values, neglecting our needs, and feeling overwhelmed or resentful in our interactions with others. One common misconception about boundaries that I want to talk about is that they are selfish or unkind. However, setting boundaries is not about excluding or rejecting others. Rather, it's about communicating our needs and expectations clearly and respectfully and taking responsibility for our own well-being. For example, if you have a friend who often cancels plans at the last minute or is consistently late, it's okay to communicate your boundaries around punctuality and reliability. You could say something like, I understand that things come up, but when you cancel plans at the last minute, it makes me feel disrespected and like my time is not valued. So going forward, I would appreciate it if we could set a time and stick to it. Another important aspect of setting healthy boundaries is learning to say no. Saying no does not mean you are being unhelpful or uncooperative. It simply means that you are honouring your own needs and priorities and that you respect yourself enough to decline requests or invitations that do not align with your values or goals. For example, if you have a boss that asks you to work overtime frequently and it's impacting your work-life balance, you could say something like, I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the team, but I'm currently unable to work regular overtime. I'm really happy to help where I can, but I need to prioritise my personal time and my commitments. Another important aspect of setting healthy boundaries is recognising that boundaries can vary depending on the situation and the people involved. So, for example, your boundaries with a close friend may be very different to those of your boundaries with a co-worker or even a family member. It's important to be flexible and adaptable in your boundary setting while still prioritising your needs and values. Another important consideration when setting boundaries is the role of self-care. Self-care involves taking deliberate actions to promote your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Setting healthy boundaries can be an act of self-care, and it allows us to prioritise our own needs and limit exposure to situations or people that we may find harmful or draining. Now, examples of self-care boundaries may include setting aside time for rest and relaxation, saying no to social invitations when you need time to recharge, or setting boundaries around your use of technology or social media. By prioritising your own self-care needs, you are investing in your own health and happiness, which can have a positive ripple effect on your relationships and overall well-being. It's also important to recognise that setting boundaries can be a process of trial and error. It's a continuous process and it may take time and practice to find out what works for you. You may need to adjust your boundaries as you learn more about what works for you and what doesn't. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes or to experience discomfort as you navigate this continual process. Remember that setting healthy boundaries is a skill that takes time and practice to develop. And when you do, you will likely feel more confident and empowered in your relationships. And finally, it's probably worth noting that setting healthy boundaries is not about controlling or manipulating others. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being and communicating your needs and expectations clearly and respectfully. When we establish healthy boundaries, we create a more positive and harmonious environment for ourselves and all those around us. So, setting healthy boundaries is an essential part of maintaining healthy relationships and a healthy sense of self. By identifying your boundaries, your values, and priorities, and by communicating clearly and respectfully, being consistent in enforcing them, practicing self-compassion and self-care, and taking responsibility for your own being and seeking support if needed, you can establish healthy boundaries that help you to maintain your physical, emotional, mental health, to honour your needs, values, and priorities, and support your growth and happiness. Remember to prioritise self-care and to be patient with yourself as you develop this really important skill. Thank you for listening to this episode of our podcast. Our Setting Healthy Boundaries is also the topic of the month of April in our Self-Care and Wellness newsletter club. When you subscribe, you will receive our free printable self-care guide and workbook and regular emails. You'll participate in our monthly competition and you'll keep up to date with what's on. And you'll also get access to exclusive offers and much, much more. So if you would like to subscribe, just pop along to newsletter.thefullspectrumcentrelimited.co.uk/subscribe. I do hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really look forward to being back with you next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found the discussion and the tips covered really helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a rating and a review and share it with your friends and family. Pop along to our website at thefullspectrumcentrelimited.com and join our self-care and wellness newsletter club. You'll receive our free 55-page printable self-care guide and workbook. Well, that's all for this episode, but I really look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and bye for now.